Welcome back to Crown Forum. I know this semester has started a little non-personal. I'm happy we got the 16th in, but hopefully the rest of the semester is a lot more traditional, a lot more interactive. Today I have the distinguished pleasure of introducing our two guest speakers who will be speaking to y'all about social constructs of Black masculinity. First, I would like to introduce Dr. Hiduko Serra. Dr. Serra is excuse me one second. Dr. Serra is the Executive Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging here at Morehouse College. During her 20 years of her career in higher education and psychology as a bilingual female faculty and an administrator of color, she has taught and trained, federally advocated for the health and equity in education and social justice for systematically minoritized communities. Dr. Sadler also has a doctorate in clinical psychology from Adler University. Our next speaker will also be Dr. Derek Brooms. Derek Brooms is the inaugural Executive Director of the Black Men's Research Institute here at Morehouse College. He is also Africana Studies professor here at Morehouse College. Dr. Brooms also has a degree in Africana Studies and African Studies from University of Chicago. I won't speak too long. We've waited long enough. I hope you guys enjoy this presentation and we can be participating in a way that's authentic.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you all for being here and allowing us an opportunity to speak with you all. We're not going to talk at you, we're going to speak with you. And we wanted to start off by giving thanks to the Crown Forum Committee, including our great colleague, Professor Dr. David Wall Rice, for allowing us space to use Crown Forum to expand conversations that we've had individually with many students here in different kind of both formal and informal ways, literally through conversations sitting in a classroom or sitting at the corner or standing up and talking. I taught a class, I wanted to make sure I mentioned, I taught a class last semester, special topics course called Black Masculinities through Africana Studies, and the whole point of that class was really to engage in critical conversations to expand our understanding and learning about masculinities plural, right? Masculinities plural. We'll say more about that. I'll give my colleague a chance to say a few words as well.
Good morning. It's so good to see you. And as Dr. Brooms was talking about, when we are talking about Black masculinities, something doesn't fit me, right? We're talking about the racial construct and also gender construct, which I do not fit into the picture. So I want you all to know that I humbly have this conversation with Dr. Brooms. I don't even begin to pretending that this is something that is close to my lived experience at all. But at the same time, we both believe that Black masculinities conversation cannot be had without people who are actually in the peripheral who are also involved. So that is the place that I am coming from. So I humbly stay engaged in this conversation as an invited guest of the topic, as opposed to someone who can speak from the lived experience. So I just wanted to make sure of my positionality and the reason why I am involved in this conversation.
Thank you for that, Dr. Serra. And in the same way, of course, I can stand in front of you as someone who identifies as Black and male. Therefore, as Dr. Serra said, I have very real lived experiences in navigating social institutions, interactions, systems, policies, practices, et cetera, where my Blackness or my Black maleness, as I like to say, really can be interrogated and interpreted in ways or even perceived and misperceived in ways that forces me to think about some of the decisions I might make, et cetera. One of the things that's really important is that part of Dr. Serra and I conversation that's been ongoing since last year, this is my second year here at the college, is that when we're talking about supporting Black men, we need an all hands on deck approach, right? And so while we may have different positionalities, what we focus on is our dedication and commitment, right? And so part of what we're doing today is speaking to you and with you from that particular lens as well. To people who are professionals who are committed to the upliftment, support, guidance, the affirmation, commendation for Black boys and Black men in all of our becoming, which then means that when we think about our social identities or we think about Black men's social identities, such as you all sitting in front of us, we have to appreciate all of who you are, not specific slices. That's also been part of the conversations we had with multiple students and student groups on campus, where there's been literal, explicit requests. When will we talk about Black masculinities? Plural, right? So we're also responding to the inquiries that we've received from some of you all or some of your classmates or some students who may have graduated last year or the years past, where we say we want to have an opportunity to speak directly with students about the work that we do and the reasons why we think having conversations about masculinities is critically important.
So one of the things that I think we need to pay attention to is this very specific socio-political realities that we are all facing. So for this reason, Dr. Brooms and I, and I'm specifically talking about all kinds of things that are coming out of this new administration in the last week alone, So one of the things that Dr. Broomson and I talked about is that specifically for this Crown Forum, we have asked Dr. Rice not to live stream. And we also are making sure that the kind of a conversation from our side be recorded, but once you all start raising your hands, coming to microphone, some of you may indeed reveal your particular positionalities and identities. We want to make sure that you are protected. So we wanted to make sure that that Q&A component not be recorded. So I want you all to be aware of that.
Ready to get started? All right. So first we're going to get started here. We've got a Mentimeter we're going to pull up, and if you could pull out your cell phones, we're going to ask you all to participate. So again, we're going to kind of transition a bit to talk with you all. And what we're asking you to do is to respond to this question, right? What is a word that you think of when you hear masculinity? So if you will, use your phone, scan the QR code, that'll take you to a link. First one. All right, we're going to give about 30 more seconds here. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and call time on the responses. We're going to go ahead and call time on the responses. And what we'd like to do is invite several folks to come up and offer a response to what they see. Not what you wrote, right? Not what you wrote, but perhaps to something that stands out to you. We could particularly look at any range of these. So we're going to ask you to come up to the microphones, or you can just say it out loud. Doing what we think. Yeah, come up to the microphone just to make sure that everybody can hear you. And just asking you to respond, please.
Y'all are unserious. All of y'all are unserious.
Yeah, the first joint that I seen go up there was Toxic, and I heavily disagree. I think it very much has to be a stigma that we pass now on the sense of it's okay to be a dude, it's okay to be a young dude, it's okay to be whatever phase you at, but that toxic dynamic that they preaching now, y'all gotta like kill that. There's no such thing as like, don't have that mindset that there's such thing as a toxic individual. We all learning, for real.
We got 2 microphones and right in the aisles. We can get a few more folks who want to share out.
I see a lot up there. Hello, my name's Charles Rhines. I see a lot up there, but it's figures like Ilya Davis, even I guess LeBron James, you can call it. You look at figures that people associate with masculinity, and it's kind of interesting because some of them I actually think like are kind of positive. Like I said, Ilya Davis, even though LeBron James may be a basketball player, he has done some good things, so.
I would have to disagree with the first brother that stood up and said we're unserious. LeBron James is a great man. You know what I'm saying? He raises his kids. He's in his kids' life. No, I'm being serious. I'm being serious.
We're asking that we respect what people share. We're not asking you to agree with everything. That's not what we're saying. We're asking you to respect it.
LeBron James is an active father, a hard worker. He's a dedicated man. That is what masculinity is about. You know what I'm saying? If y'all want a role model, a real good role model, I feel like LeBron James should be right under Jesus Christ. You know what I'm saying? He's there. You know what I'm saying? Right? Jesus Christ is always number one, but you know what I'm saying? LeBron James, you know what I'm saying? If we're looking for a role model, I'm just throwing it out there.
We don't have to agree. Hold on for a second. Let me try to get it in. We got somebody else want to speak, please?
I saw the word responsibility, and I think that's very important as a man. We have to be responsible for who we are, for each other, and I think it's important that we take accountability for what we see up here, as well as for who we are as men individually. And I also saw the word provider, and I think that that's something that is often associated with masculinity, but I think that it's most important for a man to be concerned first with himself and his relationship with God and his relationship with other men before he can provide anything to anyone else. So I definitely think that most importantly, responsibility is something that a man has to take seriously.
Thank you.
So one thing I really wanted to highlight, being a man of faith, I love to see Jesus up there. Definitely number one man, for sure. Yeah. I love that they put Jesus up there because one thing is, we should all, I guess if you're a man of faith, you aspire to be like God. We're all striving to be Christ-like as Christians, right? But even just more than that, even just looking at Jesus as a man or as a prophet, or however you look at him as an example, Jesus was not, the burliest man. He was not the most violent guy, but he embodied strength. He embodied integrity, honesty, courage, care, vulnerability. And those are the things that really do make a man. You know, the brawn and, you know, the strength and stuff, the physical strength and things that, you know, we see on social media is a lot of outward things. But I think it's also really magnified. I think there are a lot of men that do show and that do show strength in more ways than just their physical, that do show vulnerability in more ways than just their strength, you know? So I love that they have Jesus up there.
All right.
Tutu.
Yes, I just want everybody to consider what it is that made you, or made a lot of us put some of these more common words that we're seeing. Because just as blackness is a spectrum, masculinity too is a spectrum. So there's really no one way to define it. And because of that, we are all gonna have our own ideas. That doesn't make somebody else's idea less masculine because they cry or because they wear the color pink or things of that nature, things that we've been socialized to believe are associated with males. So just asking everybody to consider that this is a lot more complex than a lot of what society has taught us to believe is quote unquote masculine.
So thank you all for sharing. We want to offer a few quick thoughts here. As you saw from the title of this session, we noted the social construction of black masculinities. And so the point, or the points that we're going to raise right now are going to really connect to that. We use the notion of social constructions because that means that a phenomena exists because we give meanings to it, right? We give meanings to it. And so what it means, what masculinities mean, is highly dependent upon what we think or what we want it to mean, which suggests that even as we ask you all to give a word, we know that giving one word is very limited. Right? I don't think you could define masculinity in one word. Right? Not I don't think, you can't. Right? You can't. And so the notion of social construction then means that masculinities can be defined based on where we are in our context, right? So being here at Morehouse, notions of masculinities can mean very specific things, right? And then if we're in the workplace, right, not connected to Morehouse, what masculinities might be might also align with the responsibilities of that particular job. So I'm really fascinated, not only as an educator, but also as a researcher, also as a black man, I'm really fascinated on notions of masculinity being strong and strength, right? And one of the things I want to push you all on, invite you and push you at the same time is, what does strength mean beyond physical? Are there other ways beyond physical that we as black men can exhibit, perform, express strength? Because if our strength is only relied to or defined by our physical abilities, we have missed an entire swath of what we can define ourselves as. So I'll just ask some questions. We just do raise your hand. How many of you all think that strength can be physical? I'll give you an easy one, right? Strength can be, if you don't raise your hand, I'm looking at you side-eyed. Strength, right, can be physical. In what ways can strength be emotional? Few hands, right? In what ways, as a couple of brothers came up and shared, can strength be spiritual? Right? In what ways can strength be in our vulnerabilities? Right? In what ways can strength be in our intellect? And one more, in what ways can strength be in our love, tenderness, and caring? So I just hope you're looking around to see that we literally, even as we have strength up there as a singular word, as I was talking to a student earlier, we have to understand that there are multiple definitions of words that don't always rely on the first particular reading. So even as we talk about masculinities being connected to notions of being strong or strength, we really got to unpack that a little bit more to understand what does that look like across our identities and lived realities.
So one of the things that Dr. Bruin just asked about the strength in the what did you say, psychological strength. And some of you raised hands. And as a clinical psychologist, I have to add a piece to that, which is that how many of you believe psychological strength equates to how much you are able to take it? That your psychological strength is a kind of a meter to determine whether or not you are tough. How many of you believe that? So the question then becomes, what happens when people can't take it? And we all run into walls in our lives when things become too much. And are we supposed to equate the psychological strength with grit? How many of you believe that psychological strength is grit? So then I invite you to start thinking about what happens when your grit is not there anymore. What happens? In the amount of pressure that you may all be putting onto yourselves to 100% be gritty all the time.
To that notion, I would add also, we can talk a little bit about the notion of provider, right? How many of you all think that, in terms, not necessarily you all think, how many of you all have heard, read, or came across people describing masculinity, or to be a real man means you provide for others? Right? Overwhelmingly, thank you all, overwhelmingly that notion of being a provider is through things like meeting people's basic needs, right? So I'm a father, right? And so one of my roles is my kids depend on me in various ways. Well, connecting notions of strength, psychological strength, physical strength, notions of provider, notions of responsibility, what does it mean if we were to lose our jobs, right? How many of us have heard somebody, know somebody, came across somebody who ties their masculinity to their job and how much money they make? So most of my research primarily is qualitative interviews, and I'm gonna give you one example. I can give you many. I'll give you one example where I was talking to a young college student in this study I did a few years back, and we were talking about how he learned about masculinity, and one of the things he said was that I'm always kind of clashing with my father because my father tells me that in order to be a man, I gotta be strong and I gotta provide for my family and I gotta be responsible for everybody else. And then his father had a crippling injury that he could not work any longer. So his father had to be at the house. And it was at the axis of losing his physical strength, right, that then delimited his ability to have high earnings and provide financially for his family, where his father had to reconcile his previous social constructions of his masculinity with his work and being able to provide, that he was, more in the sense of being relegated to, I got to take care of my family in the house. So I've got to do more cooking, I've got to do more cleaning, etc. How many of you all have heard, this is again, just a question, how many of you all have heard that real men don't cook and clean? Anybody ever heard that before, seen that, saw it on a TV show, right? And so part of what we're getting into also is our masculinities are connected to gender roles and gender expectations, right? I grew up in a house, a multi-generational house, where my grandmother would be upstairs asleep, and my father and my uncles would be downstairs at the dining room table, and the coffee mug was right there. They would call my grandmother to come downstairs to fix them a cup of coffee, right? And I couldn't make sense of it, but I knew it didn't make sense to me, right? So they put this gendered expectation on my grandmother that she would serve them. And we can begin to just follow that pathway and say, well, when they had wives, what did they expect their wives to do? Say it again? Serve them, right? So if you get into a relationship where somebody's got to serve you, what happens when they say, I ain't got to serve you? Right? Problem in a relationship, right? But these are the potential, and I'm speaking about my own, these are the potential types of dynamics in families and communities where people put gendered expectations on you just because of your biological assignments. And so therefore, the ways we start to be socialized and think about and construct our notions of masculinity oftentimes comes from what everybody else is telling us, right? I'll share one more quick story. Growing up, I cried I'm sensitive. I cry. I cried yesterday. I actually think crying is healthy. But in my family, if you're a male, you're not supposed to cry. So I actually got whippings because I cried. Right? And then they asked me, what are you crying for? I'm like, well, I was crying before, then you whipped me and I'm crying again, right? Right? But what they were doing, right, what's the undercurrent message of that is I'm supposed to be strong. And so to my family, strong for men and boys, strong meant that you have no emotional, you don't emote. You can cheer, you can rah-rah, you can pound your chest, but if you cry some kind of way, you're being feminine, right? And so we begin to label behaviors around gendered identities, and we create confusion, right? We create limitations. We create challenges that make it very difficult for us to become who we are and who we want to be. Yes. You can go to the PowerPoint.
You want to do that next one?
We stay at this one more time. So we're gonna invite you. We've got about 10 minutes left. We're gonna invite you with a question here about ongoing dialogues. So the question is, we kind of came up with this together. The question is, what are some ways in which we need to create more space for various versions of masculinities, specifically here at Morehouse? That's the question. All right. Gonna actually just sit with it for a second. Right. What is some of the work we need to do to go beyond the traditional conceptions and constructions of masculinity? To be a man means X, right? As we've talked about, I think it was one of our students, I won't use the name, said that masculinity is a spectrum. So how do we create space for a spectrum of masculinities? Yeah, come on up to the microphones, please. Love that shirt.
This thing on? Okay, so as you all know, my name is Lennox Lee, a junior education studies major from New Rochelle, New York. When I think about masculinities, I think you're about being strong and confident in yourself, especially if you feel like you're not gonna get where you want to do, what you want to accomplish. You have the confidence to do it. So that's when you think of masculinities, you're being strong about yourself. Don't think you're not gonna get anywhere without masculinities. With masculinities, you're gonna get where you need to go. You're gonna be strong. That's when I think about masculinities.
Thank you. We invite you to come down. We'll ask a few other folks to share. Yes, sir.
Yeah, John Jalen.
Oh.
Yeah, John Jalen Gwynn, sophomore chemistry psychology double major on the pre-med track from Hartford, Connecticut. When I think of masculinity and expanding spaces, yes, I believe black men should define what masculinity is for them. But I think we should step outside of our circles and figure out what we are to other people and how they define us so we can expand our definition.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Just as a reminder, I know we typically give our introductions just for our discussion. We're just going to ask for it. You don't have to introduce yourselves, just for confidentiality in the case that. So thank you.
All right. I think that a way that we can accept each other's versions of masculinity are to keep an open mind. Everybody's definition of masculinity looks different, as we all know. So keeping an open mind, going with the flow of what others may want, can keep the peace and let others figure out what their definition of masculinity is.
Thank you.
Hi. I feel like a lot of the times in the conversation of masculinity, it's always tied from a socialist perspective. How much sex can you have? How much, money do you possess? How many children do you have? Are you providing for all of them? I think a good question, or at least something to think about, is looking at masculinity from an individual perspective. How masculinity, what that looks like just from you in a room by yourself, rather than what your boys think, what your father thinks. I think if that's even possible to come up with an answer for that, but I do think that's something that needs to be in the conversation.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jedediah Ahmadi. I'm a freshman business finance and sociology double major from Arlington, Virginia. And I feel like masculinity is a spectrum, like we've all been discussing. But a big part of it is I feel like we should all be vulnerable. A big part of it is vulnerability. The ability to cry, the ability to speak your emotion clearly. Because a lot of us, we're sitting down with our pain, in a sense. A lot of you have pain that you do not want to let out, which you let out in different ways, different traumatic experiences. And just genuinely talking about it or crying, literally crying, can fix who you are. Masculinity is not just macho man, strong, and all that shit.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so as the last guy was just saying, I just believe that vulnerability is the greatest strength for masculinity. I still remember one of the greatest just things in my memory, that my father once told me that I should never cry unless someone close to me is dying. And the only time I ever see him cry was thinking I was gonna die one time, and I had to go to the hospital and just, yeah. And even currently now, he is experiencing great struggle, seeing his wife and my mom going through horrible health problems, in and out of the hospital, a lot of the just bear into struggle that he has to go through right now. And I understand that it's just a horrible time for him, but I would love if he could just share his emotions and be more vulnerable during this time of his life, because it's both affecting us and just all of us together. So vulnerability is just the greatest strength for all of us.
Thank you. Thank you.
How y'all doing? When most people think about masculinity, they usually refer to role models like LeBron to go get their answers and stuff. I feel like when people think about it, they're really looking for somebody with strong moral values, being able to stand up in what you believe in and not falter regardless of what people say. That's pretty much it.
Thank you.
For me, masculinity is healthy. It's seeking to understand. So first,
can you put that a little closer? Yeah.
Okay. For me, masculinity is healthy. It's seeking to understand. First, seeking to understand, then be understood, because a man single is alone, but as a group, it's like a wolf pack. So when you have more men, you're more masculine. So being able to have a cohesive group, to me, that's masculinity.
Thank you.
I think another component we should also add to the conversation is the dynamic of confrontation. I think a lot of times as men, we don't always know how to deal with that in the most healthiest way. Sometimes, we'll literally fight each other, hit each other, or we just won't talk about it, or both. So I think just understanding that talking things out at some point usually is the best things to rectify things. So I just want to add that.
Thank you.
I wasn't gonna come up here and talk and speak, but I felt that God led me to do this. This might go against what everyone else believes, but I truly believe certain values in society.
Put it a little closer to your mouth.
The last 15 years have dictated what a man is. And I truly want to let all you men and brothers know, because y'all younger than me, that you are men, and don't let society tell you being a man or acting like a man just because it's socially not accepted anymore in the last 15 years is bad or it's toxic. You are the leaders. For 6,000 years, men have been the leaders and creators of the world. We've taken care of families. Most importantly, as a leader, as a black man in America, your responsibility is to be a servant to who you lead. The greatest leaders are servants. Now, my brother up here, I agree on what you've seen as far as your grandmother having to serve, and that's wrong as far as a spectrum. But I truly believe masculinity is a little bit more black and white than society really shows. I don't believe in the new norm of young men playing video games all day and complaining because they don't have any money in their pocket. You're in America. I hate to say this, but the white man and Asians and Hispanics, they're busting their behinds while we're complaining. Bust your behind. Be financially smart. Have high moral ground and have a high moral spectrum. Believe in what you believe in. And don't let society tell you otherwise, because there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. There is a war against men, especially black men in America. They don't want us to achieve. You don't go around and follow what everyone tells you you're supposed to follow. Society-wise, or from a history, if our ancestors, Martin Luther King, sat there and said, we're just gonna go along with what the white man said, we'll still be in chains. We'll still be sitting in the back of the bus. Don't go along with what society tells you. Break the spectrum and make the world the way you want to make it.
Thank you. Hold on for one quick second. Okay. We want to be mindful of time. We're probably going to end at about 11:51, 11:52. What I'm going to ask is for the last 6 people to just be brief, and then we'll say some closing words. We just want to be respectful of time. All right? Go ahead. Thank you.
Good morning, y'all. I just want to say, like, when I think of masculinity, I don't really think of like those other aspects and stuff like that as much. I more look at so as like your masculinity is tied to how you take care of the people around you, like your family, your friends, stuff like that. Not even to say like you gotta have kids or anything like that, or like a wife, but like how you take care of your moms, your grandma, even your pops, like just how you take care of people around you, like just like your strength to be there for people, just like emotionally, spiritually, etc. Just it.
Thank you.
When I was in high school, I heard this one quote and it stuck with me for a long time. It went, they'd rather hear you die on your high horse than fall off of it. And that's always stuck with me, because it speaks to that masculine expectation of being just more, you know what I'm saying? In response to your question of what happens when the grit, when the resolve, it fails you, when that strength fails you, I feel like it's the same answer as to like in the gym when building physical strength. It's when that burden gets to be too much, you need a spotter, you need support, you need somebody who you can share that burden with. I think the best thing that we can do as men of Morehouse in supporting each other is being willing to recognize somebody struggling with their burden, and rather than judge them or see them as weak, we just need to offer our support.
Thank you.
Many times in this country, masculinity is defined for us. We are looked at as inhuman, we are looked at as aggressive. This is the kind of mentality that will get us killed. We are human. We are vulnerable. That's not indisputable. That's not an opinion. That is a fact. That is a fact. We aren't what they define us to be. Sometimes it's not about. Sometimes we don't use aggression to hide our emotions. Sometimes we keep it within. We need to rely on each other. There's not only strength in numbers, there's strength in kindness.
Thank you.
Good morning, brothers. I'll omit my name, but I'm a political science major from Birmingham, Alabama.
And I want to first start off by saying that we had the opportunity to define what masculinity is to us. And a lot of my brothers took it as an opportunity to be transphobic. They took it as an opportunity to over-sexualize what masculinity is. We said things like our sexual organs to define what we are. And I think in today's society, when this is something that is constantly being done to us, we're constantly looked at as just what we have underneath our pants. To reduce our own selves to that is just disappointing. And as black men, I think we should hold ourselves to higher standards. And so I would appreciate if the next time you have the opportunity to define who you are as a man, you don't just instantly go to what you have below your pants, and more specifically, also don't go to what somebody else has below their pants, because you took this opportunity to attack one of the most vulnerable people in our population, which is trans black women. So I would just appreciate if y'all did better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, masculinity is doing whatever you want all the time, right? Now, in the realms of being a provider, look, you're right. Look, in the realms of being a provider, it's not what you can do when you got the stable job and you got it all together and figured out. It's what you can do when you don't. It's what you can do when you don't have it. It's what you can figure out when it's time. Shit. Like, I don't care.
Thank you.
On that note, my name is Matthew Woodfolk. Oh, on that note,
we don't need your name, but yeah, keep it close to you.
On that note, my name is Matt Woodfolk. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, sophomore religion major. What we have to understand about religion, and Dr. Rice presents this in his intro to religion class, masculinity is a construct made up by social standards. And what we can look at is gender, which is made up, and sex. Most of the things that we attribute to sex is applicable to both the male and female body, if not the womanistic and masculine presenting men. So what I challenge our brothers to look at is the things that you call masculine, can a woman do? The things that women do, does it apply to your character type? We have to expand the idea of masculinity, especially in this time when we're being told what our bodies are, who they're for, what they will be used for. I challenge you just to broaden that perspective. And to what this brother said about the video games, I ain't gonna tell you what to do with your black boy joy, bro. Do you, if it makes you happy and it's productive. I only challenge you to be an agent of change, and whether that's playing video games or mowing the grass, that's up to you. Be secure in that. And I just want y'all brothers to know that y'all loved today. If nobody told you that you're loved, you're loved. You're powerful beyond measure, and you are somebody.
Thank you.